Hey everybody. So I figured the easiest way to tell everybody about what happened with Gollum was to do a video from the time we found him to the time we lost him, because a lot of people are still finding his story on TikTok, on Instagram, you name it. But he was just such a complicated case that I thought condensing it all into one would be easiest. So, without further ado, I don't have any fancy transitions for this. Gollum was never supposed to come home with us. We were never supposed to find Gollum. Not that we're ever supposed to find any of our crazy cases, but a woman named Christine and I had been talking on Facebook about 7 or 8 weeks ago about these 6 little jelly beans that were 2 days old and born during a massive rainstorm here in Charlotte underneath a bush in front of this elderly couple's house where they have some health issues. Those kittens then got moved onto their porch, and unfortunately, because of everywhere being max capacity, they were unable to get help for these cats through animal control, and this was not the first litter that this mom had had. This mom actually was an indoor cat that was thrown outside when the people moved and continued to have multiple litters, and this elderly couple had already rehomed multiple of those litters and found them homes and actually kept a couple of the cats, but they were unable to get them fixed because a lot of the TNR clinics closed during COVID, or they're booked months out, and by the time they could get an appointment for this cat, she would already be pregnant again, and they couldn't get her fixed. Not that you can't get a cat fixed pregnant, but in their circumstance, they couldn't get her fixed. So I was talking to Christine, and she was gonna bring me these 6 kittens that were born on that porch the next day, and then another storm rolled in and it started raining massively, and I just couldn't leave them overnight, and so I got the address from her and I went and picked them up. As I got to this house, there was a little wet rat on the porch, which you guys have seen the video probably. If not, it's in here. I'll try and see if I can put any pictures in this, I don't know. But that little wet rat was Gollum, who at the time I had no idea was blind, epileptic, special needs. I just thought it was a wet kitten that looked about 8 weeks old, and he was on the porch. So I picked him up and I put him in the carrier because he was soaking wet, and his brother Batch was there, the bachelor, and he was very scared of me and wouldn't come near me until he realized his brother was in that carrier, and then he walked up to it. I grabbed him and put him in. I then knocked on the door, talked to the elderly couple, who informed me that they had another cat that, not theirs, one of this mom's kittens that was now an adult, that had a litter of 3 kittens 2 days ago, and they were under their barbecue. And I said, in my head, I'm immediately thinking, I'm not leaving any of these cats, or this problem's gonna continue, this cycle's gonna continue. We have a huge pan-Luke issue in Charlotte and the surrounding areas right now, where if you followed me for any amount of time, you would know Creamsicle, the little orange and white kitten that I treated for pan-Luke and somehow recovered. I didn't think he was going to, but he did. So that was my concern. I wanted to get everybody vaccinated. I wanted to get them fixed and find them homes. So immediately in my head, I'm thinking, I'm taking 13 cats and kittens, here we go. And I asked them, the elderly couple, I said, if you guys have a carrier, I'll take them all. And so they wouldn't let me get on the ladder to their attic because it was too dangerous. And the woman sent her husband to help her get it down. And then she starts climbing this ladder, and I'm going, I can definitely get up there and help you, but they didn't want me to climb it. They didn't want me to get hurt. It was really sweet. Anyways, they bring this carrier down and we have to zip tie it shut. It's absolutely massive. It's a dog kennel, and we put the first mom with the 6 2-day-old babies in it. So now I have Gollum, Batch, this mom with the 6 2-day-old babies, and we go look at the ones under the barbecue. That mom wasn't the sweetest, the one with the barbecue babies, but the kittens were a day old and adorable little jelly beans. So we popped them in a carrier, and the mom wanted to bite me as I was loading her up. And the old woman, she laughed because I scruffed her and threw her in. She goes, "Oh, you have some experience with this." And I said, "Yeah, just a little bit." Noodle. Anyways, so I have everybody loaded. And if I'm licking my lips a lot, it's because my mouth's really dry. Sorry. I'm gonna bring attention to that now. It's great. Hey, doing a video. So, Noodle, act right. Thank you. Intermission. I got way too much of this story to go to not have chapstick and a water. So, I have everybody loaded in my truck. Entire back is filled. Cat immediately shits. On brand. And as I'm leaving this neighborhood, I see 4 kittens running around, and I call Adam, my boyfriend, and he didn't even know I was going to pick up kittens. He had no idea. So he answers the phone, and I say, "Hey, I have 13 cats in my car right now. We'll talk about that later, but I need you to talk me out of something. I'm looking at these 4 kittens. Tell me I need to leave them." And he goes, "Well, do you have room in the carriers?" I said, "This wasn't the answer I wanted." I said, I can't bring them. And I had to sit there and have a talk and be like, "They're not critical. The kittens in my carrier are critical. These ones are not." Like, okay. So those kittens, we will deal with at another time. And I get home and I'm at max capacity. We do a lot of animal rescue with cats and kittens in general, and so we were already maxed. We had a full house, and we had a guest bedroom at the time that we were trying to keep separate and not turn it into a cat room, because we literally would have cats in every single room, every bathroom, every bedroom, our bedroom, like you name it, and it looks like a hoarder situation at a certain point. Noodle, thank you, man. If you want to be a part of it, come here. So we're really trying to not put cats in that bedroom, and I just went and said, we have to use it, and we put the bed up on the wall, eventually put that bed in the closet. I don't know how it fit in the closet, genuinely, we're never getting it out, it's still stuck in there. And we put the nursing moms together with the 9 babies in a tent in that room so that they couldn't run out. And then we went and assessed Gollum and Batch. At this time, my friend Cassie was on her way over because I just told her what I did. Because she had literally just brought me a different kitten days prior, like 2 days prior. This little goss, this tortie that was covered in fleas, found with a bunch of ducks, had a URI, a bunch of eye congestion, like she was gnarly. So I texted her, I said, "You're not gonna believe what I have." And she immediately, being a super friend, brought me litter boxes, brought me more cat litter, amazing. And then as I'm assessing these cats, I realized they're covered in fleas, Batch and Gall. And so I have her help me give them a flea bath. And at this point, I'm pretty concerned with Gollum. Noodle, you can't throw that. These are the kind of videos I make. So if you're new here again, that's Noodle. He's a rescue. Special as all get out. Love him, but 110-pound, 9-month-old Mastiff. Who's a menace. So, Cassie's helping me bathe this cat. And at this point I'm concerned because I think he seems lethargic or just kind of out of it. Granted, he was soaking wet when I found him. I hadn't had a chance to fully like dry him off and warm him up yet because I was just getting him out of the rain and getting him home and getting everybody settled. And I thought possibly Pan Luke because it's going in the area. I didn't know. And so we get him set up after the flea bath, get all the fleas off of him, get him set up in a little room. And that's when I start realizing that something else is going on. He's walking into walls. He starts walking through the food bowl. He can't like find food. Heavy appetite. He will eat like nobody's business, chowed down. But he was just different. And so I have her shine a flashlight on his eyes and I realize they aren't dilating at all. And I go, I'm pretty sure he's blind. And everything kind of made sense. It's like, okay, so he's just blind. This whole time, Batch was hiding like behind the toilet, very timid, didn't want to be like messed with much, but he was sweet. And Gollum was baking bread in her lap, just being so sweet. He's always been the sweetest cat. From the moment I found him, literally from the moment I found him, he was sweet. He like leaned into my hand on that sidewalk. He's just been a nice guy. So I schedule an appointment with my primary vet for first thing in the morning, and we just go to take him in just to confirm that he's blind. And as we get to the vet, he goes into a lockjaw state. Like literally in the parking lot, he starts drooling excessively, gets a lockjaw, really high respiratory rate. And the primary vet's basically like, I don't know what you want to put into him. Care-wise, it's a stray you just found, but euthanasia would be pretty humane at this point. And I said, let me go to the ER and see what they say. Let me just hospitalize him overnight or see if like we can get him a muscle relaxer. Because at this point we're concerned with tetanus, we already did a Pan-Luke test, it was negative. We did an FELV, FIV test, it was negative. So I was relieved on those things, but I was concerned with things like tetanus or just, we had no idea. I get to the emergency vet. Now they're the ones that treated Noodle. They treated our past dog Torque with hemangiosarcoma. Noodle was a major medical though, and we got him through Forgotten Now Family, and Forgotten takes all of their majors to Carolina Veterinary Specialty, the emergency center in Huntersville. They're phenomenal. I cannot say enough positive things about them. So we get him in, and the doctor is basically like, it could be rabies. You know, that's a very strong possibility. I've had multiple rabies cats this year. He's presenting with a lot of the rabies symptoms, and I'm kind of just in this moment going, I would have found a rabies cat. And I was like, I don't care. Okay, let's see. Let's treat him symptomatically. If he doesn't improve, then we will humanely euthanize him. But if it's not rabies, the only way to test for it is with the animal deceased with part of their brain. So I wasn't gonna give him that life sentence without trying when he was still willing to fight, and just knowing how sweet he was. So we put him on supportive care, and he responded so well that they called me in the morning. And the tech that helped me initially was Beth. She's one of my good friends there, and she's amazing. She was with me. We had a DNR on him and a do not resuscitate if something went wrong, and she was shocked that he made it overnight. And so seeing him the next morning when they're texting me, Ashley, I think, was the one that texted or called me in the morning and said, he's a new kitten, like you have to see him. And so I did, and he zoomed around the room. He ran into a lot of things, but we were all shocked. We were amazed, and we said, wow, maybe he was just really anemic. He was covered in fleas, needed some food. Maybe he just, you know, had an infection. And so we kept him on antibiotics, brought him home, had him home a week. He had been doing good for an entire week with no issues whatsoever. We moved him out of the bathroom that's our flea room, out of the bathroom, the sick den, into the kitten nursery, so we had more toys. And I went back to work as a flight attendant, and I was gone on a 36-hour trip. I landed and got home around 6 or 7 a.m. and he was fine when I got home. He greeted me at the door, and then he went into a really high, kind of like a congested state at first. And I actually texted Beth and said, hey, I feel like Gollum might be getting a URI. You know, it's been about a week. He's showing some symptoms of like the sneezing, kind of congestion, and he's having some URI kind of things. And I was gonna go either take him back in or get him meds for that. And then he goes from 0 to 60 so quickly. He went into a full respiratory distress, issues breathing, and I was like, something else is wrong. And I texted Beth, I said, I'm on my way. So we get there and they do x-rays, and he has pneumonia. His chest, his lungs are so full of fluid, and it's not looking good. He was really struggling. So we obviously put him back on supportive care. And at the time we didn't know, but the pneumonia, we were wondering how he got it, if it was bacterial, aspiration, and we realized that it was probably aspiration from the lockjaw state that he had, because when he goes into those lockjaw states, they last for a long time, and he drools excessively, he doesn't swallow. They're not good. They're not good at all. And knowing what we do now with his history of his illness and how things progressed, the daytime was usually, like the mornings he was always really good. And then around like 10 or 11, as things got worse, is when his episodes would start. But prior to that, they would start in the afternoons or late evenings when he wasn't really bad, when things hadn't progressed horribly. So we didn't know, he's dealing with pneumonia, and then he kept having these respiratory issues while having pneumonia, and we didn't know why. We just assumed it was with the pneumonia, but that's why it took him a solid 2 weeks of hospitalization on oxygen to recover, because he would go into these respiratory things. He'd have a really good morning, and then he'd need oxygen in the evening. He also had this nystagmus develop once he was there with pneumonia, which is excessive eye shaking. And that's when Dr. Royer put him on Keppra, thinking it was seizure related. And he still kept the nystagmus off and on, but his respiratory stuff seemed to do a little bit better, which again, knowing what we do now historically, he would do great with meds. As soon as he'd get the meds, he'd do really good for a few days, and then he would decline again. It's almost like his body got used to him, and then it just like shot them out. And unfortunately, with how small he was, he only weighed like 2 pounds when we found him, if that. He was under 2 pounds when we found him. With his weight, he couldn't be on very high doses of everything. So anyways, we keep him hospitalized, he gets better, he comes home, and he does amazing for 3 weeks. He had one drooling episode in a 3-week time span, and it lasted for maybe an hour, and his seizure med could be known to cause respiratory, or to cause drooling. So we just thought that was what it was. He went in for an x-ray checkup. He still had some congestion in his lungs, so his little bit of an elevated respiratory rate, we just assumed was with that. And we just kept an eye on him, kept him on antibiotics. We never vaccinated him because we were waiting until he was at a healthy point. And we kept everybody else around him vaccinated, but he was fully quarantined. We kept him away from everything, and we just basically treated him like an immune-compromised guy. And he got very, very specialized care. So we'd always been talking about neuro, though, when we thought that he might have seizures, and neuroconsult was always on the horizon. And after about 3 weeks, he went into a full lockjaw state again out of nowhere. Like, it was so random. We took him in, we hospitalized him. While we were there, he again, by the time the morning came around, he started improving. And so we decided to take him to neuro. And we went to Dr. Quigley at another Carolina Veterinary Specialty Center in Matthews. And we had an appointment, I believe, for Wednesday. And at this point, it was either a Sunday or a Monday. And we took him home because he was doing good. And we get home and he does okay one night. And then the next night, he goes into another really high respiratory distress episode. And these would last for so long. Like, a normal kitten respiratory rate is 20 to 40. And Gollum's normal was 80, like 60 to 80. And during these episodes, when they got really bad, he would get up to a solid 160 to 180 respiratory. So we were gonna take him to the ER, and we ended up going to the Matthews ER so that he could be admitted to neuro through emergency. The next morning, when Dr. Quigley saw him, because it was morning, he had no neurological symptoms, no nystagmus, totally fine, no respiratory issues. But Dr. Quigley obviously watched videos, listened to what we said, saw his fat stack of records, and yeah, we ended up getting him on another anti-seizure med, phenobarbital, a really high dose, increased his Keppra, added steroids into the mix again because he historically seemed like he had done good on steroids. And we took him home, and he did really good for like 5 days. And then Friday hits, or maybe it was Saturday, like 5 days go by, and he goes into a respiratory issue again, but it started later, and they would last like 4 or 5 hours, and it'd come and go with the drool. And so we talked to Dr. Quigley on Tuesday again when he got in the next week, and we increased that dose from 1 ml twice a day to 1.5 mils twice a day. So he's now on 3 mils of phenobarbital, 2.1 mils a day of Keppra, and we added the pred as a twice a day. So he's on 0.8 mils of Keppra total for the day. And the first 2 days that we increased that phenobarbital to the 1.5 twice a day, he spiked a fever of 104.7 the first night and 105.2 the second night. And so then we changed the phenobarbital from being, after talking to doctors for all this, we have them all on fucking speed dial. We changed the phenobarbital from 1.5 mils twice a day to doing it 1 mil TID, so 3 times a day with his Keppra. So we would get it at 5 a.m., 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. because it always seemed like in the early afternoon between 10 to 11, maybe 12, he would start having this like respiratory distress. And we associated it with seizures because he started doing a lot of this like stop and go stuff. He would never have the normal presenting seizures like you would expect, like a lot of the shaking and all that. He would just do this very high breathing, tons of drooling, and then he would just go immobile. And when he was walking, he would stop, and we associated that with the seizure activity. And as things progressed, he just started having these cluster seizures of that, the stop, go, constant respiratory distress. So when he had those 2 fever nights though, 105, that's when we added the dose of pred in the morning as well. And the fevers were under control, and then he had a good 2 or so days again. And then he started going back into a respiratory distress. And at this point, we've had Gollum. In total, we had him 7 or 8 weeks. So he went back into a respiratory distress. And on Sunday was a really, really bad, we're at present day now. I don't know if I'm missing details or what, but we're at present day, Sunday of this week. And I believe it's currently Wednesday. And it was rough. He went into an elevated respiratory rate around 10 or 11 a.m. Cat fever. Anytime now. There he is. Oh, come on. Load. All right, whatever. He, so on Sunday, went into a really elevated respiratory rate, starting early. It was at like 10 or 11 a.m. And we had tried CBD with him. We had tried changing foods with him. Like, we literally did anything we could try with him. We literally went to neuro for this cat that's 4 months old. Anyways, that rate, it was off and on all day with excessive drooling until after 1 a.m. And he'd never had a day that bad, ever. And I kind of knew on Sunday that was probably time, because we're maxed out on our meds. The thing with the meds he was on, he was on a really, really high dose. He was on already double the dose of what his weight should be, but with the kitten metabolism like he had, and his ever-changing weight, it just, sometimes they have to go on those higher doses. And sometimes kittens just don't respond, or cats in general don't respond to the seizure meds. And so that seemed to be what was going on with him, where he did respond initially and then he just stopped. So, I kind of had a feeling, because usually those episodes, they'd last for maybe 5 or 6 hours at most, and then be gone, and he would be purring and normal and running around again. And I want to make it very clear that the entire time we had Gollum, his quality of life was something we had questioned every day. From his first vet visit to every subsequent vet visit, we'd always ask his quality of life. Is he having more good days than bad days? Does he want to live? And we had so many people involved with his decisions, and everybody agreed he was fighting. And he was the first one to wake up in the mornings, and he'd go to the end of the bed and he couldn't see anything because he was blind. And he'd hear the other kittens, because we have so many kittens in our house. The ones that are out of quarantine get free roaming, as you've seen in the backgrounds. They'd run under the foot of the bed, and Gollum would jump off. Sometimes he'd land on him. A lot of times he'd miss, and he'd like knock the wind out of himself, and you'd hear him make these little like moops, and then he'd sprint off as fast as he could, and sometimes hit a wall. And he eventually figured out the layout of the house, and we only had toys at a certain point that made noise for him, and so he'd chase his noisy toys, and we made all these blind cat accommodations so that he could live a happy life here. And he had so many good days. And if you're shocked I'm just now crying, don't worry. I've tried filming this several times. The first time I filmed this video, it was an hour long because I had to stop for how many times I was crying. And so I took a break, and I am back trying to just get through it. And that's why I'm not looking at the camera a lot, because I'm just trying to tell a story to myself. Just talking about him. So, hey dog, come here. So he had a lot of really good days. He was really happy. He enjoyed his time. He had a lot of friends, all of his cat friends. He absolutely loved us. We would call his name and he'd come running. He'd purr and bake bread. He had a bed in between us on the pillow he would sleep in every night, and he'd sit there and purr. I'd wake up with him across my chest. I mean, he was happy. So when he had this last episode on Sunday that lasted for so long, and he just struggled and struggled and struggled, I kind of knew it was probably time. And so I called the neurologist and asked for any final Hail Marys, because the last time we had talked to neurology on it was like that day, the plan was just to keep him on the meds and see if he adjusted. And so when he had that episode after that and didn't get better, I called back and I said, is there anything else that we can try? Because he's not responding, and I can't let him stay like this and just keep suffering. This is not a quality of life. And at this point, I'm at the vet, and I had left that voicemail. We're at the Huntersville ER. I had texted them because unrelated, we have a different kitten that was hospitalized. Gollum's cousin, one of the jelly beans, that randomly developed diarrhea and stopped eating out of nowhere. And it just went really critical really fast, so we hospitalized it. It was with one of our fosters, and it had started doing good after supportive care, so I was going to pick it up, and I had texted the techs that know and love Gollum, Ashley, who was going to be there, and I said, hey, I'm bringing Gollum. I just don't want to leave him at home if he goes critical. So heads up, he's drooling. And she had never really had to experience him in like his really bad states, because she was always the day tech, seeing him in the mornings when he was really good. And so she kind of had a heads up. And then as I went to put him in his carrier, he went full neuro and he just freaked out. He just freaked out. I need to charge my phone really quick. I had to plug my phone in. But anyways, so as I tried to put him in his carrier to take him just to go pick up this kitten, and he was gonna see everybody he knows, because he likes the car. He really doesn't mind. He's never been bad as long as he's with you. I mean, he literally, the entire time he had been sick, he had somebody home with him 24/7. So as long as he was with people, that's all he wanted. And so I was going to load him up, and he just went into this full neuro episode, and I pretty much knew. And I texted another friend of mine that's at the vet, and I texted Ashley, and I said, hey, we're gonna set him up on oxygen, but today's the day, unless his neurologist has some Hail Mary idea. I have a phone call in with him. I'm waiting on a call back, but in the meantime, we're gonna plan on this being what we're gonna do with him, because I don't want him to suffer, and it's clear that he's no longer having more good days than bad. And we're gonna put him on pain meds and make him comfortable until we get that call. And so I get there, and the vet techs that know him, my friends that know him that are at this vet clinic, they all saw him and immediately started crying. Because we knew. We knew. It was different. He had always had so much fight to him. We took an x-ray and just to see and make sure the pneumonia hadn't come back, because as he gets this lockjaw state and he drools so much he can't swallow. So we wanted to make sure he didn't aspirate again, and if we were dealing with pneumonia, either way we were going to euthanize again, because we're not going to put him through that. That was really, really rough the first time. So as they're doing an x-ray, I get a call back from his neurologist, who's basically like, we can try increasing the meds he's on and adding an anti-nausea, but if he's not responding to the meds, you know, we're gonna have to reassess his quality of life in 2 or 3 days. And historically with Gollum, the thing was, we'd adjust his meds, he'd have a good 2 or 3 days, and then he'd decline again. And it's like his body just built up this tolerance for the medication, or we don't know, but he never really stayed doing great, aside from when he came home from the pneumonia. But that was him also just like rebuilding his weight, and you know, I don't know. So then we get the x-ray, we look at the image, and his kidneys are massive. A whole new problem. And we had all these x-rays to compare it to, because again, he'd been there for so long getting x-rays every day with pneumonia. They were just absolutely massive. Like, you could feel them on the outside of his body. And so we decided that it was just not fair to him to keep him alive. It wasn't fair. So we put him on really heavy pain meds to make him comfortable, and kept him on oxygen because Adam was on a flight. He didn't land for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And he wanted to be there, and I wanted him to be there. And Gollum was comfortable on the oxygen for the time being, and the pain meds. He was pretty sedate. So I went home. I took the other kitten home and got it all set up, because we still have 20 other cats in our care that are adopted, foster kittens. You know, they're waiting on their surgery dates, or they're too young, in our like personal house. So I took him home, Adam got home, and we went to the hospital. And Beth, unfortunately, the original, one of my good friends, one of the original techs that met Gollum though, that first night was sick, so she couldn't be there. But Ashley came in after her shift, after she had gone home. She had her kids and everything. She had them posted up in like a different room with TV on, but she came to be there for him to pass, and it was really sad. He fought really hard to have a kitten that you put so much into, you know, to not make it. It's really challenging. For anybody that's new here, just finding my content, my videos, if you don't know me, I started in animal medicine over 10 years ago in an animal shelter on the feline side. Before that, I did a lot of like animal rescue on my own, but professionally, my first job in animal medicine was in an animal shelter. And then I progressed into vet clinics as reception and moved my way into being a technician in emergency. And I've seen a lot of cases, and I've never seen anything like Gollum. I've fostered hundreds, if not into the 1,000, for cats. I spend my spare time studying information about them, so if something happens, I know how to treat them. I find it fascinating. I'm just constantly trying to learn information about animals just so I can help the cats, you know? And myself and his vet team and all of his specialists and his neurologist had never seen anything like Gollum. He was a weird case all around. All these symptoms he had of different things combined, but nothing checked. We had also gotten a toxoplasmosis titer. We had gotten an FIP titer. He was negative on both of those. I think I already said we got FELV, FIV, a pan-Luc, all negative. His lab work was good. His x-rays had always looked good originally. So for him to not make it, and us to not have really any answers other than at this point, it seems like it was probably congenital. It's challenging. He brought a lot of people together too. I'm very thankful that I have a platform like I do that has so many people that care about animals and about him, because without everybody's help, we wouldn't have been able to give him the life that he had. And it was short, but he was happy. He had a really good time. He was really loved. He had more good days than bad days. And even when he was hospitalized, he was being spoiled rotten and carried around in a boob burrito wrapped in a little blanket. So he was spoiled everywhere, and he was so loved, and he was with people 24/7, which is all he wanted. And to go from living blind, covered in fleas and anemic, skin and bones, and starving on the street, to his x-ray, his final x-ray, he was so fat. He had so much food in his belly because that cat ate. He ate so much. And his brother Batch is 8 pounds, over 8 pounds. And when he's standing upright, Gollum can walk under him, also standing upright. Gollum was tiny, but he ate so much. So for him to get to experience that, as much food as he wanted, his favorite blankets, to be a homeless little kitten that has favorite blankets and favorite toys and a whole house for his blind accommodations. I mean, I'm just really happy that I have a platform that lets cats get to experience that. It means a lot. And it means a lot to know how many people care about him and that are so sad to see him pass. And I know when I post this video, some people might be like, this was really soon, he just passed. But you gotta understand, we have 20 other cats and kittens in our care, and if I don't post this video about Gollum and get it out there, I'm going to be asked constantly. Well-intentioned people, but I'm gonna be asked constantly why he passed, what ended up happening, what's wrong. You know, we know he had seizures, we know this, but why finally? And I'll happily answer things because I feel like people want to know, and if educating the community helps more cats, then I'll take on the emotional burden of having to talk about his passing, if it helps more cats. But if I don't post this, then I can't post our other ones that still need homes, that still, you know, need to be networked, and I want to be able to do that. So we're gonna use Gollum's passing as a positive for him. It's not positive that we lost him, of course, but thinking positively about it, I know I made the right choice, because when he passed, I was holding him. When he passed in my arms, I was relieved for him because he was no longer suffering. He actually got to take normal breaths on his way out. He wasn't in a respiratory distress, and he didn't have to battle every single day questioning all these meds, and he just gets to go. And
I'm at peace with that. We gave him a really good life, and we brought a lot of awareness to him, and we brought a lot of awareness to animal rescue and cat rescue, especially in the Charlotte community, and we built a really great group of people that I've made a lot of friends through his process, actually. Even if I haven't met you in person, I feel like a lot of you I've made really solid friend connections with through rescuing Gollum, and I really value that. So we're gonna look at it as a positive that he didn't have to die alone, hungry, on the streets, suffering. That's all. Thanks for being here.